People enjoy sailing on the beautiful oceans, seas, and lakes while relaxing and listening to blissful waves. Some sail for pleasure while others work in a variety of jobs. One thing is common though. The oceans, seas, and Great Lakes are all capable of taking ships down in a matter of minutes. Today, we'll be exploring stories of some of the most infamous maritime disasters. 6. The Mary Celeste. The Mary Celeste was a boat that left New York City on November 7, 1872. Benjamin Spooner Briggs, the captain, was on board with his wife and their 2-year-old daughter. There were also 7 men on the crew. They had plans to sail to Italy. The ship's cargo was filled with 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol. What happened next has led to a mystery that's puzzled experts for over 150 years. British ship De Gracia spotted the Mary Celeste drifting alone in the Atlantic. The Celeste was discovered 400 miles off the coast of the Azores, an island chain in the Atlantic not far from Portugal. The crew of the De Gracia was stunned when they saw the ship. It had taken off 8 days before. The crew of the De Gracia was curious, so they decided to board the Mary Celeste. They were shocked by what they found. Not one person was on board the Mary Celeste, and the lifeboat was gone. Also, the ship had about 6 months' worth of food and water on it, which was plenty for the intended voyage. The cargo was left untouched. Down below, the ship did have a flooding issue where 3 feet of water was on the floor. That was not a dire situation though, and the crew could have simply repaired the leak responsible for the water coming inside. The De Gracia's crew found the last log entry by Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs. The date was marked November 25th. The crew of the De Gracia decided to take the abandoned ship to Gibraltar, a British territory in Spain right at the entrance of the Mediterranean Sea. The Mary Celeste was then examined by the British Vice Admiralty Court. The reason they brought the ship to Gibraltar was for salvage purposes. By doing so, the crew was entitled to the insurance money on the Mary Celeste. At the time, the insurance payout was roughly $46,000. The British officers in Gibraltar were immediately suspicious of the De Gracia's crew. Were they trying to pull off a scam? Did they do something to Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs, his family, and the crew of the Mary Celeste? A 3-month investigation yielded no evidence of foul play. The insurance company, however, decided not to pay the $46,000 to the crew of the De Gracia, just a small fraction. During the early 2000s, Anne McGregor and an oceanographer named Phil Richardson decided to investigate the strange fate of the Mary Celeste. She told Smithsonian Magazine in 2007, "There's so much nonsense written about this legend," she said. "I felt compelled to find the truth." What she found was both fascinating and baffling. She uncovered no evidence of a mutiny or an attack by pirates. If there was a mutiny, the ship would have been in even worse condition. It was by no means in danger due to the flooding. The captain and crew were very experienced, and abandoning ship was the last thing they would do in the Atlantic. McGregor and Richardson's research led them to think there may have had to have been some equipment issues with the Mary Celeste. First, it's believed that the chronometer, an important piece of navigation equipment, was faulty. It had them drifting 120 miles west in the wrong direction. Also, the flooding in the ship was more than likely caused by faulty ship pumps. They were found disassembled, leading McGregor and Richardson to think that Benjamin Spooner Briggs was worried about the flooding and wasn't sure if it would get worse. But the truth on the fate of the Mary Celeste remains a mystery. Benjamin Spooner Briggs, his wife, his daughter, and the crew were never found either. 5. The MS Explorer. It was November 2007 when the MS Explorer, a cruise ship from Liberia, was on a 19-day voyage across the Falkland Islands and Antarctica. Passengers would have been able to see whales and penguins had the trip gone smoothly. Unfortunately, the MS Explorer struck ice near the South Shetland Islands located not far from the coast of Antarctica. There were 154 people on board at the time. Luckily, they all safely made their way to lifeboats, where they spent hours in the water, openly exposed to freezing temperatures while waiting for help. It finally arrived when a Norwegian cruise ship spotted them from a distance. From there, the passengers were then taken to a Chilean military base. A spokesperson for the cruise ship company responsible said the boat did actually hit some ice, but suffered a small amount of damage, only the size of a human fist. Still, officials from Argentina examined the damage and claimed it was more significant than what the cruise company claimed. The MS Explorer marks the first cruise ship to sink near the Antarctic continent. 4. RMS Titanic. This has to be the most famous cruise ship wreck in history. The RMS Titanic was a British ship that was built for $7.5 million. Construction started in 1909 in Ireland, and the Titanic was branded as unsinkable thanks to its design. The ship was built for transatlantic crossings, and the business was booming during the early 20th century. The Titanic was 882 feet in length and boasted 4 iconic smokestacks. About 100,000 people watched the launching of this majestic ship. On April 10, 1912, the Titanic set sail from Southampton, England, and headed to New York City. There were an estimated 2,200 passengers and crew members on board. It was April 14, 1912, when an iceberg was spotted at about 11:40 p.m. It was part of a 4-mile-wide ice field. Nearby ships messaged each other about the dangers. While this was communicated to the Titanic, the ship still didn't slow down. It's believed that the ship's crew was under pressure to get the Titanic from Southampton to New York City on time to set a record. When the Titanic spotted the iceberg, it was already on a speedy collision course, traveling at 22 knots or 25 miles per hour. Despite efforts to avoid a crash, the Titanic grazed the iceberg. Portions of the iceberg underwater gashed open the side of the ship and created a 300-foot slash. Water was rushing in fast, and the ship was in serious trouble. An evacuation order was made, and the lifeboats were prepared to be loaded. This was by no means a simple procedure. It was remembered as incredibly chaotic. But there was a major problem. There were not enough lifeboats to accommodate all of the passengers. There were 3,300 on the ship, and the lifeboats could only hold 1,200 people. Also, when the lifeboats did get filled, they were not filled to their full capacity. It took less than 3 hours for the ship to fully sink. In the end, 1,490 to 1,635 people were killed. About 750 people survived the terrifying ordeal. Do you know any interesting facts about the Titanic sinking? Let us know in the comments below and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the video so far. 3. RMS Lusitania. The RMS Lusitania was a British ocean liner that was launched in 1906. It was one of the largest ships in the world at 787 feet in length. Not only was it the largest ship on the seas, but it was also one of the fastest. The Lusitania usually made trips between Liverpool, England, and New York City. It was May 1915 when the Lusitania left New York City for Liverpool. But this was not the safest time for ocean liners. Europe was deep in war. Germany and its allies were fighting with England, France, and Russia. The United States claimed to be neutral, but it was secretly sending supplies to England using ocean liners. The Germans knew about this and decided to take action. They had their U-boats patrolling parts of the North Atlantic, and they declared waters around Britain a war zone. 3 months earlier, the Germans said they would conduct unrestricted submarine warfare in this area. Any ship sailing there was fair game for attacks. The German embassy put articles in American newspapers warning people that if they were sailing to Britain on a ship displaying the British flag, they would be at risk. About 1,959 people were on the Lusitania when it set sail that May. But that wasn't everything on the ship. The Lusitania held military supplies from the US for Britain and their allies to use. This included rifle ammo and shells. There was about 173 tons in total. The captain of the Lusitania, William Thomas Turner, was ordered to avoid the waters that separated Ireland from Britain. It was also requested that he zigzag the Lusitania so U-boats couldn't track his boat. Turner went ahead and sailed into the waters anyway in a normal pattern despite the warnings. A German U-boat quickly spotted the Lusitania off the coast of Ireland on May 7, 1915. A torpedo was fired, damaging one side of the ship. The torpedo explosion caused a second explosion from the steam engines and made things even worse. The Lusitania sank within 20 minutes. It claimed the lives of 1,198 people. Of those who passed away, 128 were Americans. Many in the US were outraged by this disaster. It would be another 2 years before the United States officially entered World War I, but unrestricted submarine warfare has been mentioned as one of the factors that drove them to war. 2. The Edmund Fitzgerald. One of the most infamous shipwrecks in Great Lakes history was the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald on November 10, 1975. 29 men went down into the frigid and unforgiving waters of Lake Superior that day. The incident happened northwest of Whitefish Point, Michigan, during a terrible storm. The ship was commissioned by the Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company and was named after Edmund Fitzgerald, Northwestern Mutual Life's president. The boat cost $8 million to build and was launched in June 1958. The Fitzgerald measured 729 feet and was the largest ship on the Great Lakes during that time. Things didn't exactly go well at its launch. The boat rolled violently when it first hit the water. Spectators were almost hit by a giant wave, and a man even suffered a heart attack and died. The final mission of the Fitzgerald took place on November 9, 1975, when it was scheduled to haul iron ore from Wisconsin to Zug Island near Detroit. While on its trip to Detroit, weather conditions on Lake Superior deteriorated fast. Gale warnings were issued, and the weather turned into a scary situation for the crew. Hurricane-force winds up to 90 miles per hour, with waves reported to be 35 feet, slammed into the Edmund Fitzgerald. Another ship on Lake Superior, the Arthur M. Anderson, stayed in touch with the Fitzgerald during the storm, but lost contact around 7:10 p.m. A search of the lake yielded 2 lifeboats from the Fitzgerald, but no one inside them. Some debris was also found, leaving rescuers with a puzzling mystery. Sadly, the Fitzgerald was taken by Lake Superior and sank 535 feet. A US Navy vessel was sent to the area to investigate the wreckage in May 1976 and was able to get a few video and images of the sunken ship. 1. Costa Concordia. The Costa Concordia was an Italian cruise ship that faced disaster on January 13, 2012, near Giglio Island between Italy and Corsica. The Concordia was Italy's largest cruise ship when it launched in 2005 and measured 951 feet. It was known for its luxurious amenities, and it could hold about 2,400 passengers. But when it sailed in January 2012, there were over 3,000 passengers on board, not including 1,023 crew members. The captain made a fateful decision. The ship deviated from its normal route and sailed a tad too close to Giglio Island. The plan was to salute the island and blow the ship's horn. The captain of the ship was Italian, and there were a few crew members from Indonesia. At some point, likely due to a language barrier, there was a command that was mistaken and the Costa Concordia hit a reef. The mistake created a massive hole in the ship, measuring 174 feet wide. Water rushed into the hull, and it did extensive damage. The engine room was flooded, the ship lost power, and there was no way to steer. The Costa Concordia tilted to one side, and it quickly took on too much water. Things looked dire for the crew and passengers. One of the passengers made a call to some family, saying that the ship was in trouble. The Italian Coast Guard then called the Costa Concordia and asked if they needed assistance. The captain apparently downplayed the situation. 10 minutes later, he radioed the Coast Guard back and admitted that things looked bad. What happened next is a bit sketchy. The Italian Coast Guard's contact with the captain happened around 10:15 p.m. The first rescue ship arrived at 10:40 p.m. and at 11:20 p.m. the captain apparently abandoned the ship. The rescue operation was difficult. The ship was leaning badly to one side, and passengers had to be evacuated using ladders. Those leading the rescue learned the captain was not even on board the ship. They were able to get a hold of him on a lifeboat. The orders were for the captain to return to the Costa Concordia, but he refused. Those involved in the rescue saved over 4,000 people. 32 people died in this disaster, and one person's body was never found. The incident made its way to court in July 2013, where crew members and the ship's crisis coordinator were charged with several crimes including manslaughter. All were sentenced to less than 3 years. The captain had a separate trial, which lasted almost 2 years. He was eventually convicted of various charges, including manslaughter, and given a greater sentence of 16 years in prison. Let us know in the comments if we missed any interesting wrecks. Thanks for watching, make sure you subscribe if you haven't yet, and we'll see you in the next video.